The first day at Ridgeway Secondary was already loud enough to rattle the windows, but everything shifted the moment the new girl stepped through the campus gates, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her steps quiet but confident enough to draw a few curious glances. Her name was Ayla Khan, and though she tried blending into the ocean of noisy students, her calm aura made her stand out among kids who thrived on chaos. Ridgeway had a long history of trouble, mostly because of Darren Briggs, the self-declared king of bullies whose ego was bigger than his actual achievements. Darren had a habit: every new kid was fair game, and every act of dominance fed the legend he carefully built around himself. That morning, as Ayla walked through the courtyard scanning for her homeroom, Darren spotted her like a hawk spotting prey, nudging his crew Brandon, Kyle, and the ever-laughing Reese, before whispering, "Fresh meat." They circled her like wolves trying to sniff out weakness, but Ayla kept her posture straight, her breathing calm, her eyes steady yet soft, a look that only irritated Darren further because she wasn't giving him fear, she wasn't giving him anything. He stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "You're new here, right?" he said with that smirk he thought was charming but which more often resembled someone trying too hard. Ayla gave a small nod. "Move, please. I'm going to be late." The simplicity of her tone, calm, respectful, unbothered, poked something inside Darren, something he wasn't used to feeling: irrelevance. "Oh, you'll move," he said, pretending to step aside before quickly kicking a puddle of muddy water directly onto her shoes and jeans, splattering brown across her clothes. His friends burst into laughter. He waited for the usual reaction: shock, tears, anger, but instead, Ayla simply looked down at her wet clothes, then up at Darren, her face serene but now carrying a faint, sharp glint that no one else caught. She whispered quietly, "Are you done?" which made his laughter hitch for half a second. But Darren, determined to regain control, reached out and shoved her shoulder lightly, more a test than an attack. And in that moment, everything changed. Ayla stepped back, her mind flashing, not with fear, but with memories of her old school where she'd trained in self-discipline, balance, and defense, lessons her grandfather had drilled into her: never strike first, but always finish the fight they force on you. She tried to walk past Darren again, but he grabbed her arm, mocking her, saying, "Ah, little princess needs to run to class?" The tone, the grip, the disrespect, it crossed the invisible line she had been patiently avoiding. Ayla looked at his hand gripping her sleeve, then at the smirking face behind it, and calmly said, "Let go." Darren squeezed harder. Brandon laughed, Reese pulled out his phone, and Kyle whispered, "Dude, this is gonna be good." They had no idea how right he was, just not in the way they expected. Without raising her voice, without a dramatic wind-up, Ayla shifted her foot, pivoted her weight, and delivered a single, clean, perfectly timed kick to Darren's center of balance, not harsh enough to injure him, but powerful enough to send his ego crashing into the concrete as he dropped flat onto his back, breath knocked out of him, eyes wide with shock as the entire courtyard froze in stunned silence. The bullies blinked. Students gasped. One girl dropped her sandwich. Darren lay there staring at the sky as if gravity itself had betrayed him. Ayla didn't gloat, she didn't laugh, she simply stepped back, dusted off the splash marks on her jeans, and said in a clear voice that carried across the courtyard, "You don't get to treat people like that." No one dared move. No one spoke. Even the teachers at the far end of the yard paused, unsure if what they saw was real or some sort of collective illusion. Darren's friends rushed to help him up, but his pride slipped through their fingers like shattered glass. His face burned red, not from pain, but humiliation. Ayla didn't wait for round two, she simply walked toward her class as if she hadn't just reset the school's social hierarchy with one defensive strike. But Darren wasn't done, not by a long shot. He stood, breath heavy, fists clenched, fury creeping across his face as Reese whispered, "Bro, she dropped you like a folding chair." Darren shoved him away, still gasping, still processing the reality that the new girl had beaten him in front of almost everyone. And worse, she hadn't even tried. He muttered under his breath, "She's dead after school," and stormed off, planning something none of the students expected. Meanwhile, word about the incident spread through every hallway in a matter of minutes. Some kids cheered for Ayla, others whispered that she must be some kind of black belt warrior, and a few simply replayed the moment in their minds like a highlight reel. In homeroom, Ayla sat quietly, trying to focus, but she could feel eyes on her from every direction. A girl named Lila passed her a note that read, "You're kind of a legend already." Ayla sighed. Great, she thought, exactly what I was trying to avoid. She came here to start fresh, not to become the school's new headline. But destiny, or in this case, Darren Briggs, had different plans. While she tried to keep a low profile, Darren spent the entire morning rallying his crew, his anger festering into something dangerous. He wasn't just humiliated, he was dethroned. His ego, once towering and untouchable, now lay cracked on the pavement, and he wanted nothing more than to put his crown back on, no matter what it took. By lunch, the tension in the school was thick enough to slice. Students whispered whenever Ayla walked by. Some nodded at her with respect, others avoided eye contact in case Darren saw them taking her side. Ayla sat under a large tree outside, hoping for a quiet moment, but peace was a luxury the universe wasn't offering. Lila approached hesitantly. "You should know. Darren's planning something. After school. Ayla didn't flinch. I figured. He won't fight fair, Lila warned. He never does. Ayla took a slow breath. I don't want to fight. That's not what he wants. Ayla looked out across the courtyard, where Darren's crew watched her like vultures waiting for a signal. She didn't want trouble. She didn't want a reputation. But some storms come for you whether you call them or not. And today's storm had a name, Darren Briggs, the bully who had just realized he picked a fight with the wrong girl. And as the final bell neared, students whispered, traded predictions, and gathered in clusters, waiting for the showdown they knew was coming. Little did they know, what was about to happen after school would shake the entire district, bring teachers running, and make Ayla's name echo far beyond Ridgeway's walls. And Darren, well, he was about to learn a lesson he would never forget. When the final bell rang, it felt less like the end of the school day and more like the opening bell of a championship fight, one the entire student body had been waiting for. The hallways emptied faster than usual, students rushing toward the backfield where Darren had declared that Ayla would pay for humiliating him. But while everyone gravitated toward the showdown like moths to a flame, Ayla remained in her classroom for a moment, staring at the sunlight pouring through the windows. She breathed in slowly, telling herself not to get dragged into unnecessary chaos. But deep down, she knew this wasn't a choice anymore. The storm she'd tried to avoid was already waiting for her outside, fueled by Darren's bruised ego and the cruel delight of kids who loved watching someone fall. With a steady mind, Ayla packed her bag and headed out the door. Every step echoed through the corridor, the empty school mirroring the quiet inside her chest. As she approached the backfield, she could already hear the chants, the whispers, the bets being made between students who weren't brave enough to stand up for themselves but had no problem watching someone else fight a battle they'd never dare face. When she stepped onto the grass, 100 eyes shifted toward her. Some students stepped back to make room. Others leaned forward, eager to see if the girl who defeated Darren once could do it again or if his revenge would finally restore the crown he'd worn for years. Darren stood in the center, arms crossed, jaw clenched, his eyes blazing with the kind of anger that doesn't cool easily. His crew gathered behind him like shadows ready to pounce. Reese was recording again, swaying with excitement as if he were filming a blockbuster. Kyle and Brandon smirked, confident that today would end differently. Darren pointed at Ayla the moment she entered the circle. Look who finally showed up, he growled. I didn't come for a fight, she said, her voice steady and even. I came to talk. The crowd groaned. Talking wasn't what they came for. Darren laughed bitterly. No, no, no. You embarrassed me in front of the whole school. You think you get to walk away from that? Ayla kept her hands at her sides, calm as a still lake. You attacked me. I defended myself. That's the end of it. No, Darren snapped. That was the beginning. He stepped closer, close enough that Ayla could see the hidden insecurity behind his rage. You think you're special because you dropped me? Because people won't stop talking about you? He jabbed a finger toward her chest. This is my school. My territory. My rules. Ayla's eyes softened, which only enraged him further. Darren, she said gently, you're not angry at me. You're angry at the truth. That someone finally stood up to you. A ripple moved through the crowd. Some kids nodded subtly. Others watched Darren's face turn an alarming shade of red. Darren lunged at her, his fist swinging wide. It wasn't controlled, it was raw emotion with no technique behind it. Ayla stepped aside effortlessly, letting his momentum carry him forward. He stumbled, regained his balance, and glared at her with humiliation burning in his eyes. Stop dodging and fight me, he screamed, and the crowd cheered like he'd said something heroic. Ayla didn't move. I don't want to hurt you. You already did. Darren charged again, this time trying to tackle her. Ayla shifted, redirecting his movement with a simple pivot, sending him sliding onto the grass. Gasps erupted from the students. Darren scrambled up, dirt smeared across his shirt, rage spiraling into desperation. Get her, he barked. His friends hesitated. No one expected him to involve them directly. Reese lowered his phone. Kyle stepped back. Brandon muttered, man, she's just defending herself. This isn't right. Darren snapped his head toward them. I said get her. But before anyone could move, a voice boomed across the field. Hey! Break it up right now! It was Coach Ramsey, the toughest staff member in Ridgeway, storming across the field with the principal and 2 teachers behind him. Students scattered, pretending they weren't part of the spectacle. Darren froze, his plan collapsing as quickly as his courage. Coach Ramsey stepped between Darren and Ayla, towering over them. Someone explain what's going on, he demanded. Darren opened his mouth, scrambling for excuses, but the principal raised a hand. Save it. We saw enough from the cameras. Darren's eyes widened. Cameras? Of course, the field, the yard, even the hallways were monitored. His face lost all color. Ayla, the principal said gently, come with me. She nodded. Darren Briggs, the principal continued, you and your friends will come too. Brandon groaned. Reese started sweating. Kyle looked like he might faint. As they were escorted toward the office, whispers followed them. Students whose names Darren never bothered to learn now whispered Ayla's like she was a superhero. But Ayla didn't smile. She didn't feel victorious. She felt tired, exhausted from fighting a battle she never wanted to be part of. In the principal's office, Ayla recounted everything calmly. Darren tried twisting the story, but the footage didn't lie. When the administrators were done reviewing everything, the verdict was clear. Darren received a suspension, mandatory counseling, and the possibility of losing his position on the football team. His friends got detentions and warnings. As they left the office, Darren stopped in the hallway, staring at his reflection in the trophy case, his image distorted, cracked, broken. Ayla walked past him quietly. Why didn't you fight me? He muttered. She paused. Because you're not my enemy, she said softly. Your ego is. The words hit him harder than the kick ever did. Days passed. The entire school shifted, subtly, but undeniably. Students walked taller. Kids who were once afraid of Darren realized he wasn't unstoppable. Some even apologized to Ayla, thanking her for doing what no one else could. Lila sat with her at lunch now, and slowly, Ayla started feeling like Ridgeway could actually become a home. One afternoon, as she left the building, she saw Darren sitting alone on the steps, looking smaller than she'd ever seen him. Hesitating for a moment, Ayla approached. Are you okay? Darren didn't look up. I deserved everything, didn't I? Ayla sat beside him. No one deserves to be hated, she said. But everyone deserves a chance to be better. Darren swallowed hard, something fragile cracking inside him. You're not scared of me, he said quietly. Never was, she replied. Darren let out a shaky breath. I want to change. I just don't know how. Ayla stood and offered him a hand. Start with this, she said. Stand up, not to fight someone else, but to fight the old version of you. Darren stared at her hand for a long moment before finally taking it. And for the first time since arriving at Ridgeway, Ayla smiled, not because she won, but because someone else finally did.